Welcome to The Third Story. I'm Leo Sidran. Last week I came to you with my first in a series of conversations that were conducted over the space of a couple of afternoons during the Winter Jazz Fest in New York, just last week. Today's episode features conversations with Gilles Peterson and Kassa Overall. When I had the chance to conduct these conversations, which were live streamed on Relics and hosted at Bowers & Wilkins Sound Lounge in the Moxie Hotel in the East Village, the first person I reached out to was Gilles Peterson because I knew that he was associated with Winter Jazz Fest, but also because I've wanted to talk to him for a very long time. You know, as we retreat further and further into our own private corners of the internet, into our own personally selected social orbit, and receive advertising and content that's targeted directly to us, and that really only reinforces whatever point of view we may already have established, it's harder and harder to find cultural ambassadors, tastemakers, or curators who can reach across the boundaries of genre, of demographics, of category, and simply turn us on to something new, something interesting and important. There are really only a handful of people left in the world who still have that influence, the reach and taste on the level of Gilles Peterson. Gilles is one of the most influential DJs and music curators in the world, and throughout his career, he's played a pivotal role in promoting jazz, hip-hop, and electronic music. He founded the influential labels Acid Jazz and Talkin' Loud, and he started his current label, Brownswood Recordings, in 2006. Whether as a broadcaster, a live DJ, a record producer, a festival organizer, or a music curator, Gilles has devoted his life to finding, contextualizing, and presenting music from around the world. He tells me that he sees his job as connecting the dots. And one of his most recent discoveries, one of the most recent dots that he's connected, is Kassa Overall, who is, in the words of Time Out New York, a renaissance man, part chopsy, super funky jazz drummer, and part rising producer MC. Since the January 2019 release of his critically acclaimed debut album, Go Get Ice Cream and Listen to Jazz, audiences from around the world have had the opportunity to experience Overall's unique blend of jazz, hip-hop, electronic, and spoken word. And Kassa and I first spoke in 2019. This conversation is a bit of a reunion for us. His forthcoming release, I Think I'm Good, will be released on Gilles Peterson's Brownswood Recordings later this season, but the first single, I Know You See Me, is out now. Let's see, I guess a couple of things I do need to let you know about. Number one, I first got connected to Gilles because I knew that he was a fan of some of my dad's early records, particularly his very first record, which was made on Capitol in 1970 or 71. The album is called Feel Your Groove, and there's a track on it called About Love that Gilles just loved. And I know he plays it, and he's been in touch with my father about it. And so when I first reached out to Gilles several years ago, I knew that he would have a sense of where I was coming from because I knew that he knew my dad Ben's records. But the first correspondence that I remember having with Gilles was when I was on my way to Cuba to take a trip with the late, great record producer Tommy LaPuma. And I knew that Gilles had spent time in Cuba developing a series of recordings that were done in partnership with Havana Club Rum and Havana Cultura. He went down to Cuba and discovered some incredible talents, produced a series of albums, Havana Cultura albums, and really opened up a kind of a new Cuban sound. So I reached out to Gilles before I went down to Cuba myself to see if he had any suggestions of people I should meet with, places to go. Gilles has also spent time in Brazil and in Africa. He really sees himself as a kind of ambassador. He takes his aesthetic and his point of view into various corners of the world and infuses the local music with his aesthetic and his musical and creative values. And then he also takes the temperature, collects some information on the ground, and brings it back to his audiences from his studios at the BBC in London. The other thing you should know about the conversation with Gilles is that we started on my little handheld recorder in the lobby of this hotel, of the Moxie Hotel, and then we strolled over to the Sound Lounge stage because they weren't ready when we first got started. At a certain point, you'll hear the fidelity and the general atmosphere of the conversation shift because eventually we end up on the live stream to finish the conversation there. And as I mentioned, this is the second in a series of episodes that were recorded at the Hello.
So, for some strange reason, your email keeps going into my junk box. This has been going on for a week or two. I don't know what's going on here.
Well, you should be able to flag my email as not junk. in your junk box. There should be a button that you can press where it says not junk.
Not just put it into the file.
Put it in the file, but then also along the way, there should be a place where you could say, in the same way that you can flag something as being junk when it comes in, you should be able to unflag it or flag it as not junk as well.
Okay. So I can do that from the inbox if I put it in the inbox.
It's possible. I haven't been using MacMail in so long, I don't remember.
Okay.
But Ben.
Yeah.
You know, you're calling me while I'm recording my introduction to the episode that I'm putting out today, which is 1/2 conversation with Gilles Peterson and 1/2 conversation with Kassa Overall.
Oh, fantastic.
And I was just telling the people that the first understanding that I had of Gilles Peterson was that he was a fan of your Capitol record.
Yes, About Love, with your mother singing background vocal.
You went on Giles' show on the BBC a few years ago in London, right?
I did.
What was your impression of the scene and what he was doing?
Well, it was, very professional. He had a producer and an assistant, and it was BBC time. They were running quite a ship. It was interesting, man. It was like watching a DJ work in a high-end studio because they were still spinning vinyl too. He was very cool. He knew my music. And
you have to assume if he knows your music, I'm not saying, but if he knows
a lot of music.
He probably knows a lot of music if he found you.
He knows a lot of music. Exactly. No question. Yeah, he knows a lot of music. I wish I could have worked with him, man. I thought that would have been good.
Well, you still might be able to.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, hey man, before you go, what's the website for the people? The one that the people can go to get all the stuff, for the podcast.
Oh, the website? Oh, you mean third-story.com? Everybody should hang out there.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ben. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
See, I'm giving it to you raw and unfiltered, my friends. There it was. My dad called. My email went to his spam. We're working it out. I mean, this is real life here. This is not for pretend. You're here with me. Third-story.com is the place to go for all your Third Story podcast needs. Sign up, subscribe, get involved, check out the archive. I've pulled some videos that are relevant to today's conversation as well, and you can find them there. Of course, while you're there, you'll also find the link to the Patreon page where you can support this project on a deeper level. You know this. While you're at the website, you can also click on all the social links to follow me in all your favorite social places. All right, let's get to it. My conversation with Gilles Peterson. I'll check in with you before the Kassa Overall portion of the episode begins. Here's me and Gilles Peterson in the lobby of the Moxie Hotel in the East Village of New York last week. Gilles Peterson talking to you offline here because we're waiting for them to set up. Just getting a sense of what your day is like and your nights are like. I feel as though you have a sort of a double job of both presenting music and also kind of checking out the scene when you go on these excursions. What do you see as your role or your job?
I mean, the thing is, it's interesting because I'm coming at music from a different perspective to musicians, but I'm kind of coming at it from being a DJ primarily. So, I mean, that's really my creative sort of part of me, which was a bit that was just the guy who played records before the bands, in between the bands, back in the early 80s. And slowly, as DJ culture grew, and I was part of the acid jazz and the acid house explosion in the late 80s, I found myself being the headliner instead of the bands. The bands were sort of around me. And so suddenly I found myself having to perform and be an artist. Suddenly, when I was getting my visas for Japan, it was artist. It was like, that was really strange to me. It still feels a bit strange to me. So that side of my kind of life has, I think, been my priority. And around that, I've done radio. Mm-hmm. Around that, I've run record labels. I've compiled albums. And, in the most recent years, I've been in a very fortunate position because of my DJing and the fact that I was one of the few DJs who was really traveling globally back in the early 90s, whether it was Australia or America or Japan or residencies all over Europe. I sort of got a reputation for being somebody who was a little bit of a cultural ambassador.
Yes.
I'd bring this music back, play it on the radio in the UK, And in reverse, people would book me in other parts of the world because they wanted me to bring a bit of London.
Yes.
So, I remember going to Brazil, first trip to Brazil, and I arrived there to DJ, and it was a decent crowd, and they were waiting. And I played a bunch of Brazilian tracks on vinyl, And after a couple of songs, people were looking at me going, we didn't book you to play music that our grandparents play.
And yet, both in your Cuban productions and your Brazilian productions, there's something really interesting that you did, which is to bring a kind of an outside vision to look at music that I think in both of those countries they took for granted. I mean, you recorded like a Brazilian song that was almost like an anthem to them that they would never have thought to record on a contemporary record. But considering you came with this outside point of view...
Well, it was the fact that the Brazilian experience was quite an interesting point for me because they wanted me to bring acid jazz.
Yeah.
They wanted me to bring this new thing happening in London.
Yeah.
I was obviously a champion of that. I was part of that. But on the other hand, there was another bit that made up the mix that the DJ scene in the UK was about, which was a collecting thing. Mm-hmm. So the whole point of what we, I think, did, and that's why I think the UK's influence is really important because we're big collectors of culture and music. That's why you have Northern Soul.
Yeah.
I mean, where else could that happen? Where a bunch of guys from the north of England literally are looking in random towns in America for records that were kind of didn't quite make it onto Motown, and so this obscure soul became this movement where people would dance dressed a certain way. And my kind of growing up thing was going to clubs as a person going out at 15, 16, listening to my favourite DJs on pirate radio stations who would be playing Ben Sidran records, who'd be playing Mr. Bill Goes to Brazil. They'd be playing, About Love.
Sure.
They'd be playing, but equally they'd also be playing Terra Masahino merry-go-rounds from Japan, or really crazy stuff. And for me it was like, what is this music? And then there was a whole culture around that was about what you wore, how you danced. And this unique thing, I've never found it anywhere else in the world. And I was so hooked on that. When I went to a club once, and the DJ, Paul Murphy, this is 1985, was playing Art Blakey Night in Tunisia, the Phillips version, all 18 minutes of it, and there were like 100 people going, battling on the dance floor, dance battling, break dancing, but jazz style, knee drops, spins, Nicholas Brothers, but with a sort of street energy, young black kids in London dancing to this. I was like, this is what I want to do.
Yes.
My sort of purpose in life is to bring this music to a wider audience.
Yes.
In an environment where people, because jazz was such a dead community for me. I love the music, I loved everything about it, but you'd go to the clubs and it really was that cliche, and it had no impact for me. I just didn't want to be part of that. But I love the music, so that's why we kind of created our way of enjoying the music.
Right. So I've read this story that you told in the past about how the title acid jazz came to be, and it was almost like a kind of a joke.
It was a desperate call for not going down the route that everyone else was going down, which was having discovered acid house and ecstasy tablets and whatever else, and mixing this, because before 87 it was a very it was really Thatcherite Britain. It was pints of lager and jazz funk records and soul and disco, and suddenly we all ended up going to Ibiza. I was part of this crew of DJs, Paul Oakenfold and Pete Tong, and actually no, Pete wasn't there. Danny Ramplin. We ended up in Ibiza for a weekender, and
in the 80s.
This is 85, 86.
And what was Ibiza like in the 80s?
Well,
was it beginning to have its flavor of?
Well, kind of. And we were just these English boys abroad who used to organise trips where we'd bring 300, 400 people over to take over their clubs. Yeah. And we'd literally have our own soul parties and jazz parties there. And of course, by going there, we suddenly discovered sort of the real history of Ibiza and DJs like Alfredo, and go and see him and listen to his DJing, which was a complete flip to what was going on in New York with people like Larry Levan, had been inspiration before for us. And so suddenly we discovered Alfredo, we discovered ecstasy. And at that point, Detroit was blowing up and Chicago. So
house music,
you had the acid house music, the really early days. So suddenly someone was like, "Whoa, take that pill, listen to acid tracks by Future," and it's unbelievable. Now, I didn't actually take the pill on that trip. I was just watching it and thinking, wow, this is crazy. All my friends have changed overnight. And then they bring this energy back to England.
Yeah.
And that was acid house. And that was acid house, which actually turned into, fast forward 30 years, EDM.
Yes.
So you go to Las Vegas in a casino now and you've got, Diplo DJing or whoever it is, and
you see that lineage. That's
fully that was the year dot for that kind of thing. So from my point of view, I was like, I like the music, but I'm not sure I'm really into this. And I love the jazz. I saw the connection between this acid house and actually kind of free jazz. So my whole thing was, let's mix kind of art ensemble of Chicago and Byron Morrison Unity and Pharoah Sanders records, droney stuff, and then mix it with the acid house. And so there we were in a party, and I was about to go on. Everyone was going crazy. Paul Oakenfold was on, and there's 1,000 people out there going mental. And I went on, and with a partner DJ of mine with me at the time called Chris Bangs, and we were like, if that was acid house, this is acid
jazz.
And then we played some crazy funk with sort of psychedelic guitars and used the vari speed on the turntables to create some effects. And then we just kind of, and then people were like, yeah, this is all right, and we just sold them a different side of it. I think. But the spirit of the change in the atmosphere of the clubs at the time, the key for it was that we incorporated that energy into a different musical background.
Yes.
And so we didn't lose that audience, that very strong energy of youth.
So you didn't come with the sort of culture around jazz, the traditional culture of jazz, the more insiders attitude. Hey, let's walk over here.
Sure.
So, as you're talking, it feels like... Here, we can start talking like this.
Yeah.
Stream once they need like a couple.
Okay. I want to know more about this Michael Franks album you've done, because funnily enough, I was really keen to get him to perform at a festival I do in the south of France, in Sète, which is celebrating its 15th year this year. And I was like, oh yeah, what do I really want to hear? Who do I want to hear? In that festival? And I thought Michael Franks, and so I sort of went on a bit of a sort of search for him. I noticed he's about, but obviously you know more than me. You just made the record.
I know about as much as you know. I've discovered that after I made this Michael Franks record, people came out of the woodwork from all over the world asking me for his email and his phone number and how to get in touch with him. And he's clearly a very private person, and he's somebody who is a bit mysterious. He doesn't tour that much, but it's not that he's not touring, because he does perform. He did sing on the record. I've never been in a room with him, so I don't have much to tell you other than that he's obviously a private guy. And for me, making the record was it was an opportunity to go back into his work and celebrate him and appreciate him. But the fact is, I made it also the year that Tommy LaPuma passed away, and it was as much a way of connecting with Tommy, and so most of the material that I did is from The Art of Tea and Sleeping Gypsy. And
I haven't heard the record, but the catalogue's great. And actually, it's interesting you mentioned Tommy LaPuma, because he was somebody who had a very strong impact on me, because amongst the years of working in the music industry, in parallel to all the other stuff I was doing, notably radio and doing the club thing, I sort of had to learn very quickly. I started off independent record label.
Yes.
And then I got kind of poached in a way by a major, which was Universal, Phonogram at the time. And I spent 10 years running a record label, setting up a label called Talking Loud.
Yes.
And in that time, I really very fast, you got to remember, I was DJing 5 nights a week and really, high, full-on life at the time. And suddenly I'm also running a record label at a time when boutique labels like mine were very new. So an incredible amount of learning in my head and difficult times in a way. But I do remember going to America, because what would happen, apart from just having to sell what my dream was to a, let's just say, old-fashioned rock and roll record company, I would then have these records, and then it was like, well, we need to get them released all around the world. So I'd come to America, I'd come to New York as a 25-year-old boy. And, I'd be going up Fifth Avenue and I'd have meetings with Ed Eckstein or people who were working at Mercury. And I was really surprised by the divisions in music in American music industry. There was like the black side, the white side, the sort of middle side. And I was like, wow, so there's so much to learn. But when I met Tommy Lipuma a few years later, having already slowly got used to the American way, he was an incredible, beautiful breath of fresh air for me. He connected with me so fast. He was a joy to be with. He understood. Obviously, his legacy was fantastic. But as a person, he was really quick to understand what it was that I was about. And that's not easy because I was coming from a very different place.
What you describe as your history as a DJ is really very similar to what an A&R person or a label representative would do, which is to kind of check out what's happening and then present it in a way that they feel people should receive it.
Yeah, and the first thing when you're an A&R person is to learn how to sell a passion in the space of 30 seconds to someone who really doesn't want to get it. So that was what I learned coming to America more than anything, because I was in a room and they were all there waiting for me to sell my band. And if I dropped focus or lost their concentration, it was gone. That was my moment. So you learn to be quick and to be dynamic and to be able to sell, and I'd never known about that, in music. I was just a fan of music. I mean, what's all this about?
Well, that's the interesting thing, because over time you've gone from being a fan to kind of an advocate and now a producer in a very sort of traditional way. A producer as somebody who sees the potential in an area of music and then tries to craft something out of it. When you started making records as a producer, what was it like after so many years of being a fan?
It was traumatic for me because the first time I produced a record, say, where my name was on that record as producer was when I went to Cuba for the first time, and it was with Roberto Fonseca.
Yes.
And so I was actually going to Cuba just to do a compilation record, actually, for a brand, for Havana Cultura. And they said, oh, Giles, we need to get the new audience into Cuban music and culture, so we'll send you to Cuba and take a look around and we'll do a comp. So I went over there. I thought, I've never been to Cuba before, got to go. Went there, amazing, but no records for sale, or obviously, there was no industry, but there was lots of great live music. So the best thing that happened to me then was that I managed to meet up with Roberto Fonseca, who was really curious about my background and was worldly and obviously had traveled a lot, and he was really fascinated by this DJ culture and electronic music. I was fascinated by what he was doing in the jazz and the Cuban music, so we basically hooked up together, and he said, let's just make an album, let's forget about doing a compilation, let's just make a record. So I then spent a little while running about, meeting people, checking out the singers and the players, and it was a combination of him and me. And then we just ended up going to Egrem Studios, which I'm sure you know very well, which is about the most, there's no studio there, apart from an incredible room.
That's right.
And it is an incredible room, but you've got to bring everything in. And then that was it. I was in the studio with Fonseca, and fortunately for me, he really understood what I wanted. And we found a happy medium and made a record which I'm very proud of.
Yes.
And introduced people to the voice of Danai Suarez. And as the years have gone on, I've been able to work with a lot of great up and coming Cubans, and most recently Daime Adosina.
Yes. Well, and I think because of your time there, you've actually been able to kind of help launch these careers. I mean, it's really incredible. The artists that you found on those first records and the first Havana Cultura record, most of those artists have gone on to have international careers.
Yeah, I know, it's mad. It's great, and it's a joy. And I'm particularly inspired and always delighted to be working with Daime. She's incredible. She's actually in Toronto at the moment. We just released her second album, which came out a few months ago in the UK, and we're working on a new record with her.
In the same way that the record business has changed, the role of a DJ in popular culture, cultural broker, cultural ambassador, even tastemaker, I don't know how you feel about that word, is changing because people are getting their information all over the place. What do you think the role is of DJs and of kind of culture
ambassadors is today, and is it changing? Do you feel it changing?
I think it's obviously very, very difficult now to make a mark, especially in the way that people like me were able to, because now everything's so much more concentrated. And I think it was quite interesting for me yesterday being here at Winter Jazz, because, I was there watching Mackay McCraven at Webster Hall, and it was the jazz world. And I knew everyone.
Yeah.
And it was great. And I loved the feeling of being there, and I love this community that exists. But when I go to somewhere else, I'll be around the dance music community, and I'll know them as well. And then I'll be in another place, and I'll be sort of dealing with different communities. So for me, over the years, I mean, nearly 40 years I've been doing this.
Yeah.
I've been able to almost join the dots between all these different types of music, and I don't know how easy that is for somebody today to be able to you need to put, that's years of work. So the role of the DJ today, I mean, it's so, I was buying records this last couple of days, and I was with a young producer friend of mine who's 22, and she's a DJ, and she's into the kind of mix that I like to put out. And I was buying some quite obscure records at quite expensive prices, and I was just thinking, if you're 21 and you want to kind of get to do what I do, it's very difficult to catch up 40 years of music. And if you want to do it on vinyl, then you just can't do that, because it's going to cost so much money. And I think there's a real transition right now with a lot of DJs as well that do go back to vinyl because of the way it allows you to do your art. It doesn't seem to make sense to play records. It's so outdated, and it's like people, but when you're performing, if you have vinyl and other forms of digital play, it just allows you to perform differently. It's a bit like playing, I'm going to play the double bass.
Yes.
I could play the electric bass, or I could play, a synth that plays the bass notes. But actually, the double bass will always allow you to have this sort of a certain sound. And so I'm finding that a lot of DJs are using vinyl more. But also, I think that what happened with digital music and all the apps that you can have if you DJ is it makes it, every DJ ends up sounding a bit the same. So, you can be a brilliant technical DJ because you've got the app to do that.
Yeah.
So when I'm performing around the world in festivals, quite big festivals, whether it's Deck Mantle or Dimensions, which is full of very young people, they actually want to see you playing with vinyl. If you just turn up with a laptop, that actually, and that's the youth.
Yes.
If you see what I mean. So
no, I think it has come back around that in a sense, because there's so many young people who grow up with so much technology, they see what's possible. When there was a transition to technology initially, it seemed like a very modern thing to do.
Yeah.
How do you decide what you're going to play when you go somewhere?
Again, it's probably a bit like a jazz. I mean, well, look, musicians, jazz musicians. I watch you guys, and I'm so envious of seeing, when I was watching the guys yesterday on stage, just interacting and making sound. There is nothing more joyful than that. So with me, as a DJ, I'm almost trying to make it as difficult as I possibly can for myself. What that means is that I never play the same set. I always change my box.
Really?
Because I put myself in a position where I have to react a bit like a jazz musician to a situation or to an atmosphere or to a mood. That means that I spend a lot of time stressed out, especially before big gigs, when there's a lot of people, and they expect, and the DJ before you's just delivered the most perfect set, but probably the most perfect set that he's played for the last 3 months. And I think people are getting a bit used to that, and I think that there's that sense of danger which you need to do. So whether it's in music, so at the end of the day, if I was a jazz musician, I'd probably be in a free music band. That's where I'd end up being. I'd be in, I'd be playing with Hillel's a bar or something. That's where I think that's where I'd be, and I'm that version. I'm the DJ version of that.
That's where your heart is.
Yeah.
Gilles Peterson, thank you so much for sharing a little time with me. I know you're a busy guy, and thanks so much for your huge contribution to the music.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate what you're doing. And you know, let's remember your father was a major inspiration for all of us, and where he stood within music. I think that, you know, again, I connect with people like Ben very much.
Gilles Peterson bringing the music to the people for many years. Well, as I mentioned, Kassa Overall's new record is coming out on Gilles Peterson's label, Brownswood Recordings, this year. And I spoke to Kassa last year. I really got along with him. I really liked him. I liked his point of view, his energy. He's both totally serious and kind of down to have a good time also at the same time. So this is a real treat to get to reconnect with Kassa for this Winter Jazz episode. Kassa and I actually maintained a bit of contact after we did our first interview last year, and he even came over to my little home studio to record vibraphone and use some old vintage drum machine technology that I am in possession of for his new record. So I did get a chance to hear the development of his new album, I Think I'm Good, at various stages, but I'm happy to be talking to him about it here in this conversation. So you'll hear there's a kind of familiarity, and you know, if you heard our episode from last year, then you'll see where we were kind of picking up where we left off last year. But there is no need for you to go back and listen to it if you haven't already, because there's plenty of new information for you starting right now. Me and Kassa Overall at the Sound Lounge in the Moxie Hotel in the East Village last week.
Hey. Ho. Welcome to planet Earth, where if you slip, then you die.
Then what happens?
Vision full of scars, still they listen to I.
Well, don't stop now.
Been through a little, still it feel like a lot. When I laid down to rest, and it feel like a plot. You hear that?
What is that? Is that the Wim Hof thing?
Yes. It's instrumentalism, man. You know, it's not just the notes, it's the
They used to say it's the spaces in between the notes.
Exactly.
It's the crack in the voice.
Now we say it's the I don't know what we say. We're still working on that. We'll get back to you. This is my first cup of coffee. Yeah, ever in life. This shit is crazy. Why didn't y'all tell me about this? Now I see why y'all looking like crackheads in front of Starbucks.
All right, guys.
Okay, let's do this. Okay.
We're live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Live from the Bowers and Wilkins Sound Lounge at the Moxie Hotel in the East Village of Manhattan, live streaming to your pods, your faces, your phones, your all of those things. Winter Jazz Fest, Relics, me, Leo Sidran, on the road again. This is a Rode microphone. He, hailing from the great state of Washington, drummer, MC, beatboxer, backpack producer.
Hey.
You may know him from such vinyl albums as Go Get Ice Cream and Listen to Jazz. I think he's good. You think he's good. He thinks he's good.
I'm good.
Kassa Overall.
What's up, man?
What's up, man?
I'm cool, bro. That was the best minute of my day so far.
That was good.
You rose to the challenge.
Did I get there?
Bruh.
You set the bar high.
No, man. I just did a pull-up.
So listen, man. We've been having a series of conversations, some of them recorded, some not.
Yeah.
When I first was introduced to you a year ago, you were presenting this record, this one behind me.
Yes.
Go Get Ice Cream and Listen to Jazz.
I was.
And one of the things that you said to me was that after years of keeping your musical identities somewhat separate, like you had this jazz identity, you had this hip-hop identity, you had this, programmy part of your life, and you weren't sure how to bring them together. But then finally, when you did, in one statement, people sat up and listened, and they said, I think we start to understand who this guy is.
He likes ice cream and making jazz music.
Here we are 12 months later, basically.
Yeah.
And it seems like we're continuing along those lines. I think it worked out. It's working out.
Yeah, I think they're like, you know what? Let's see what he does if we get out the way a little bit.
Dig it.
Yeah.
Do you feel that it's opening a little bit? Things are...
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's funny how music evolves because 5-6 years ago when I was producing on Escape Velocity for Theo Croker, it was like, should we do this much? Like, maybe it's not, people aren't going to
should we
embrace it.
Should we take it this far away from jazz?
Yeah. Like, I was, like, trying to put in, like, produce kick drums and, like, trap hi-hats and stuff. And it was like I pushed him all, he wanted to do it, but I was like, if you're going to do it, you got to all the way. You can't just do that and then have, like, Blue Bossa on track 5, you know what I mean? But then looking back at that music now, and it doesn't even seem provocative. Like, it's like, because everybody's doing it. Everybody's got sneakers on their gigs, you know what I mean? And so it's just the music evolves so fast that if you're somebody that's trying to push the envelope, you have to constantly leave what you did in the past, And for me, so I have another album coming out February 28th. It's called I Think I'm Good. And it's being released with Brownswood Recordings.
Congratulations.
Shout out to Brownswood. The whole Brownswood is right over there.
Well, then I will say it's a stealth operation.
It's
the whole of Brownswood is out here.
A person and a half.
Yeah.
The thing was that I was thinking like, man, I could make a whole bunch of stuff that sounds like this.
Yes.
And, people seem to be positive about it, so it'd be easy to just make a bunch of that.
You know how you did that. Just do that again.
but I couldn't bring myself to do that. And the stuff that I was making, I thought was really cool, but I thought it was very different. I thought it was almost like too weird. I'm always making something that feels like it's a little too weird for right now. And then the position I'm in now, I'm so glad that I did, because everybody's doing something that's,
too weird.
Left of center and
Yes.
new jazz and da-da-da-da-da. So my stuff's even weirder.
Right.
I
You
think.
got to go even weird.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I was thinking about, because I was listening to some of the work that you did with Theo Croker recently, and I was thinking about how hi-fi it sounds in a way compared to your new record, like in the sense that you're not afraid to leave the edges a little loose.
Totally.
You like to leave it so that you can almost. Sometimes you're not sure how it was made, but I know that you made it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's part of my thumbprint, I guess, is like taking real raw stuff, and not like perfecting every little thing, but maybe putting a perfect frame on it. You know what I mean? But keeping the bushy tail, the bushiness. You know what I mean?
I think that's a really unique approach to using programmed production, in the sense that you could shine it up
You could make it perfect.
You could make it perfect.
But that would suck.
Well, when you choose not to make it perfect, and the parts of it that you choose to leave imperfect become part of the statement,
Yep. And I think those are also, for me, entry points for a listener who may not be extremely an advanced listener, like a lot of musical knowledge, because they know, or they know things that are just like, oh, that's like regular human, I just heard him swallow right there, or whatever, and those kind of things say like, okay, this isn't about being perfect. This is about making sure the message is clear, not perfect.
Well, so let's talk about the message then. How do you see the message of this new collection of songs?
I think this new album is just really diving into myself, and I think that for me, there's always been an aspect of the music I make and an aspect of my life that I felt like not comfortable pushing to the forefront. My dealing with like depression and my shadow self and crazy stuff I've been through in my life. And part of that was like thinking that I needed to make music for people to party to or to dance to or to whatever, but at a certain point, it's like I noticed people reacting to the real stories or the things that are like coming out of my, my cathartic kind of stuff, and So, I had a few songs that were dealing with like experiences with, I had some mental illness stuff and just I had a few songs that were kind of just dealing with those experiences, and it started to be like, well, that's the loudest part of this album. So I kind of just decided to make the whole album cohesive with that feeling, and there's different, it's not, the whole album isn't sad, but it's all like connected. You know what I mean? So the positive songs are like, they're positive in the sense of like, how can I rise and be a bright person after going through all this stuff, or so it all kind of weaves together. It's kind of cinematic, and it was hard work, man.
Was it harder work not talking about that before you started talking about it, or was it harder when you started opening up about it?
I think it took courage, right? I don't think it was hard before, because it's like you're not really ready to talk about stuff till you're ready to talk about it, and that's okay. I'm realizing now that it's, as an artist, you don't have to talk about anything you don't want to talk about. And I didn't understand that before. You watch so many Breakfast Club interviews or different kind of like rap gossip interviews, and you kind of feel like as an artist you have to just be like expressing everything you have, like we're looking at you over the microscope, but the reality is that's not really your job as an artist. Maybe as a public figure or an entertainer, but as an artist, it's like you're supposed to like express your experiences in metaphor, and you express the rest of life in metaphor. And so it's like it takes time to get ready to talk about what you're ready to talk about. Sure. You know what I mean? And so it just felt like time.
And you control your narrative. I mean, you're in charge of your narrative.
Yeah.
So it was time.
Exactly. One thing I did, because the content is a little more, what's the word? It's less honey on the content. And even sonically, certain songs are a little more avant-garde sounding.
Yes.
But what I did is I balanced that out with really crispy production. So the production on the new album is a lot better than the last one. And just in the sense of like sheer sound quality and mastering.
But meanwhile, I love this thing that you've started to say about yourself. I referenced it in our little intro, is that you started calling yourself a backpack producer. Not a bedroom producer, but a backpack producer.
Yeah. And you experienced it.
I did experience it, and that's why I think it resonated with me, because you did actually, full disclosure, come over to my house and record my vibraphone. Joel played it, this fabulous vibraphone
Joel
player.
Ross.
But I saw you come over with your laptop, super minimal, ready at all times to make this record.
Yeah, and I came through. I rode my bike to your house.
Yeah.
And I had my laptop and my interface. And you had a home studio.
Yep.
And we ended up just using my laptop.
That's right.
So that I could just take the files and go right back to my bedroom and chop it up. And so, that process was big for this album, because I realized that there's a certain power in being small. Like there's a certain power in being light-weighted, because then you can stick and move in a way where you don't need to go to the studio that you pay for or get your engineer to do this or that.
Yes.
You're doing it yourself. So whenever inspiration strikes, or when you have the free time, whether you're at home, you're on an airplane, you're waiting for the plane, you always have it's kind of like a writer always has a pen and a pad and just ready to go. And so it's like, for me, that's just the way it works,
Well, and also you have a whole other part of your life in which you are not presenting your own music, but you still play with other people. So you're on airplanes and you're traveling with people, you're playing with people.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's becoming a lot less lately, for better or worse,
Yeah,
but
tell me about that.
Well, it's just the thing is that like when you're trying to build your own thing, you kind of have to leave the space for things to come in, and a drummer like me, like a musician like myself, people will hit me up and be like, so look, we got April and June.
And you're just supposed to put a big line through the month of April.
Yeah. And the thing was, like, that happened a few times last year where it was like I got called for maybe one really big gig in October for myself, but I committed to a tour for October. and I had to turn down that opportunity. And that opportunity definitely would lead to more opportunities. And maybe there would have been one gig I would have got called for in November that would have paid more than that whole October tour. And so it's kind of like you just kind of have to start going like, yeah, I don't need to make all the money. Like, let me just go chill,
So are you in that moment right now? I mean, we're watching you in this moment of saying, I'm going to clear out more space and see what fills it.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, yeah. And I mean, not only that, it's getting filled now, so.
Good.
Yeah, it's filling up more, so.
And how do you feel about letting go of that aspect of your life, that aspect of the mercenary, the drummer, the person who's there in a supportive role of other people? You ready to let that go?
I think that it's like seasons. I think there'll be a time where I can come back around and do that. But right now, it's like it's just I gotta give it. I put too much in to this already. That like if you put a lot of time and a lot of money into something, you gotta stay while the crops are growing up.
Yes,
harvesting time. You know. So yeah, it's just I do love playing with other people, and it's not just like this ego journey of like the self, you know what I mean? Like I love playing with other people, but it's just a matter of time and energy. And right now, it's like I gotta do my thing.
Gotta do this, yeah.
Gotta do my thing right now, man.
And how are you performing it? How do you perform this music, and what part of you do you showcase when you do it?
All parts. I did my first European tour in November, and most of the tour was duo. So I played drums, electronics, looping, sequencing, vocals, singing, rapping. And then my co-producer, Paul Wilson, he played piano, MIDI bass, MIDI, just sound effects, electronics. And he had the mic for the hype man vocals. You
need that. You got to have that.
Yeah. But it was really interesting, though, because I could go between this, like, drum and piano avant-garde duo energy, like it almost like Cecil Taylor and Max Roach. You know what I mean? Like we could go all the way over there and then make a left turn like and like drop a loop, and I'm rapping and he's on the drums playing a hip-hop beat. You know what I mean? And it could just really shift, and I think those drastic shifts is what it's kind of like what I'm dealing with right now. I'm noticing people.
You told me that once before. That's the thing that you like. You like to set up some expectation, and then subvert that expectation with people.
Totally. I love it. Now 2 days ago I performed for Winter Jazz Fest at Mercury Lounge, and it was me doing what I do. Paul on MIDI keys, Mike King on piano, Morgan Guerin on electric bass and Iwi, Melanie Charles on vocals, Jay Horde on vocals, and my brother Carlos Overall on sax. And so that was like the first time we did the big group, and that was dope too. And it was funny because that was the first time I had more vocalists and stuff, and I was sitting there going like, man, I could really like almost go in the background. Like I set up this whole system, this whole organism, and once it's going, and I'm like, wow, I can really just kind of almost be the hype man for my own idea.
And then you are doing something. The interesting thing about that, after having spent so much time of having to be backing somebody else up, is understanding that when you put the thing in motion, it still belongs to. It's still your statement, even if you're just watching it go down.
It's definitely still, like you said, the statement. It's I love leaving room for whoever's playing with me to do whatever they want to do. Like sometimes I'm like, because most of the people that play with me, they play like piano, bass, and drums. And on certain songs, I'm like, yo, what do you want to play? Like, you could play piano, you could play drums. I'll put whatever you don't play, I'll put in the track. Like, whatever you want to do, And sometimes when you give a quote-unquote sideman, because that's not even how I'm thinking about it, but when you give a sideman that kind of freedom or power, then you kind of, it really gets more organic, and they're like, oh man, we're just hanging out.
Yes.
Like here's a floor tom, you know what I mean? And it gets more, you know, and
there's no right way to do it. At that point.
Yeah.
Well, I watched you with Joel Ross when he came and played this vibraphone overdub on your record. I was very curious to see how you were going to approach it, because, as you say, there's a shiny element to what you do, or a kind of a produced element to the sound of it. But at the same time, your attitude was very much a jazz attitude. I mean, if you gave him 2 takes, it was a lot. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm like, it's good. Like I could record you walking out of this room with a good mic and make something super dope. And if you happen to trip on your way out, that's gonna be what makes the track dope.
Right.
So, you know, after a while you kinda, you know, and I played with so many people that wanted to get it so precise, and so I want it to be like this. And it's like, but you might be missing out on the greatness you didn't know existed, you know what I mean? Like most of the best things that happen, it just kinda happened like luck, so quote unquote.
But how do you luck upon sounds and events in the box?
Yeah. Well, it's two parts. Like when you're recording, you know, you definitely just don't have too much of an exact idea of what you want. You just know you're almost like a field recording. Mm-hmm. You're almost like an interviewer. You're almost like a journalist.
You're interviewing the music.
Yeah. You're more of a journalist. You're more like trying to get to understand, right? And so you're checking it out, and you're like, and then as you're listening, you find out what is the thing that's special, and okay, this is the focal point. Then you take that, and then you go back into Ableton. For me, I go to Ableton Live, I drop it in, and then I just spend hours listening to it over and over and over, and I listen to it from the beginning. Say we get a minute in, and I hear, oh, what if a drum beat drops in right there, you know, and I edit that in, put it there. Then I start back from the beginning. I listen from the beginning, so I can be the listener, so I can be the consumer, and then I hear it drop, and I hear how it will affect, you know. So a lot of what I do is always go back to the beginning, even if it's some little tiny delay edit at the end. I like to listen to the beginning to go like, what's the experience going to be? And I notice a lot of editors or producers, they'll do an edit, but they'll listen back to right there.
Yeah,
you know,
check
and
the edit.
Like, yeah, and it's like, but you don't know how you're going to be feeling when you get to right there. You know what I mean?
Right, it's a context.
Yeah, so context is extremely important. And I think this whole idea I'm dealing with, I talk about a lot about framing.
Yes.
It's context. Like this, what we're doing right now.
Yes.
It could be in another context. We could record this, and I could time warp it to 16 measures.
Yes.
This could be a play. These could all be scripted. Like there's so many different contexts that what we're doing, it could be, you know.
Absolutely.
And it's like once you start thinking about these boxes within boxes, worlds within worlds, and it's like, it's all weird.
It's all weird. But I love the idea of you feeling almost like you are a journalist waiting for the music to reveal itself to you. You know, I mean, that's what I'm hearing you say.
Now, but
I like that. The same thing could be described of playing with other people, right? I mean, that's also a similar experience of responding to what's coming to you.
Listeners. Dennis Davis, right? Rest in peace, Dennis Davis. He played with Stevie Wonder for years. He was a sideman. Yeah. And he passed a few years ago, but I remember he was saying, I was talking to him at St. Nick's Pub in Harlem, and he said like something about not knowing what the song was when at the jam session, and he was like, man, just count it off, man. I got Mickey Mouse ears. You know what I mean?
I'll hear anything.
Yeah, and it's like, if you're listening, you can't really play too much of a wrong note. You know, sometimes I'll play a song at a session. If I don't know the song, this is a little kind of flipping it, but if I don't know the song, I can't really hear the form and stuff. I can't even play a good cymbal beat because I can't hear where it lays. You know, like the reason my drums sound good is because I just know where the context, where it's laying within the musical material, the harmonic material.
Well,
and so it's like hearing.
Yeah, what you're hearing. But so, I want to talk about your drumming also in the context of your solo records, because last time we talked, I asked you about the way you set your drums up, and in general about the evolution of jazz drumming. I don't know if you remember, I said I had this picture of Art Blakey when I was growing up over my bed, and how far away are we from that concept of two cymbals,
And I think I said that we're still there.
We're right there.
Right.
You said we're right there. We haven't moved. You said.
It's still the same thing, yeah.
But what I think is so interesting about your production is that because you are such an accomplished drummer, sometimes it seems like the stuff is just totally programmed. Like, or then you'll drop in a little bit of live drumming on top of it. Sometimes the live drums lead it, and sometimes the live drums kind of punctuate it, or kind of are the icing on it.
Yeah. Well, what's the question?
Well, what? What about that? I mean, I guess.
How do you feel about that?
How do you feel about that? I mean, no, just when do you think and how do you think about the way the drums interact?
Yeah. Like, how do I navigate like when to do this or when to do it like that? I think again it actually relates to the thing I just said about the harmonic material. Like if you have an organ, a mellotron, and one vocal line, and a shaker. I'm thinking about the first track on my album. To add in a whole drum groove, it might make it so you can't hear the what's cool about those three sounds.
Yes.
And so it's really a space thing. It's like a lot of it is like knowing what to take out. So like there'll be a lot of songs I might have added programmed drums or added live drums, and then muted it, and I heard this cool other little counter thing, and so a lot of it is just scissors, actually, more
editing.
so, more so than pasting, cutting,
taking away.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Sometimes it's also just kind of throwing stuff at the wall, like, and trying, because I come from making beats like with a MPC 2000, and I remember watching a Kanye interview from 15, 20 years ago, and he was talking about replacing the drums on a hit song, and it was like, the drums wasn't working, so I muted the drum track and put the Dr. Dre drums from so-and-so, and just kind of like pasting a new thing in, pasting it, and sometimes that's how you find it. You cut, you're like, man, this ain't dope, and then you mute everything except the one thing that is dope. And just start from there, and so sometimes that's all it is. It's just experiments, science, laboratory style. Hypothesis.
So, I'm so hung up on your production because, as you know, I geek out on that stuff. But, I think from the average listener also, maybe the first thing that they're going to hear and notice is the sound of your voice,
Hey.
You started out kind of like as an MC, but you sing now, too.
I'm trying.
You're a singer. People are going to hear you, and they're going to say, "Oh, he's a singer."
That's cool. It's really however people interpret it is all good. And if people, like, for example, if somebody came to see me and I was singing, and all they thought that it was just I'm a singer, and they're like, man, he's not a good singer, whatever, you know what I mean, like. And they don't know about anything else, right? That's fine, and you got to take that L. It's kind of like sometimes I'll be dressed a certain way, and I'll be killing it. The outfit I'm wearing is killing in a certain environment, and then I'll go to another city or another part of that city and walk in, and I all of a sudden feel like homeless.
See, I am constantly looking in every area of my life, the way I dress, the things I say, to basically be able to just slide into all the situations and never feel like I'm out of place. But it's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. And sometimes I'm like that, right? But I kind of like the other thing, too, which is like, I kind of like
the extreme thing.
Like, joke's on you. You thought I was homeless. I got the dopest outfit on in the city. Like, y'all, you played yourself.
That's right.
I mean?
Well, that's context, too. That's
it's
just
context.
all context. Well, I was very impressed with how quickly this came together. It gives me a sense that you must be
writing all the time?
I'd use the term writing very loosely.
Yeah.
When I get in that mode,
Yeah.
I'm constantly thinking about the songs. You know what I mean? Sometimes some songs, they come together when I'm just like walking somewhere and I have the idea.
Yes.
Of like, oh, if I do that, you know,
Yes.
or even like the live show, I'll be thinking, how am I going to play all these tunes and fit them together?
Yes.
And I say, okay, we'll do it like this. And then I try it out in rehearsal or whatever. And I'm like, boom, you know what I mean?
It works.
It works. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, but sitting and writing lyrics or sitting and writing chords out, I don't spend a lot of time doing that. But a lot of, like, some songs, they got written in performance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I'll try this little idea out over this song. I'll try that little vocal lyric thing. And sometimes it doesn't work at all, and you just kind of, you know. But then sometimes it cuts through, and you can feel the audience go, yeah, I felt that. And then you go back and you do it. You know, market research.
That's what you have to do, market research.
That's what I think, yeah.
You called the record I Think I'm Good.
I think I'm good.
I feel like that has a little bit of a double meaning.
Probably quadruple.
Quadruple,
Uh-huh.
multiple meanings.
All right, let's see.
Let's go through them.
Okay. Oh, wait, you want to bring me the test press?
Oh.
We have a humble offering.
This is the test pressing for I Think I'm Good. Now, is this going to be the final artwork, Kassa?
I wish, actually. I was just thinking that just now. I was like, this would have been the dopest artwork of all
Just
time.
solid white cover, no label. Then you know what when you're playing the Kassa Overall
Right.
record because it's the one with no label on it.
Yeah, and then getting an autograph is huge.
Very big.
You know, you get that joint signed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, now I'll know what this is.
Yes. You'll have to sign all of them individually.
Yeah. I sold one of these at Turntable Lab yesterday.
A test pressing?
A test pressing to
Yeah.
somebody. Shout out to Turntable Lab. Also, sorry for doing business in your business without giving you a cut. But yeah, I sold.
Whoa.
You know what I mean? It was like, I had the test presses. I was like, yo. He was like, can I buy one? I was like, nah. And then I was like, $50.
Well, the nicest thing you could do, I guess, is to give a shout out to Turntable.
But shout out
considering
Turntable
you
Lab.
actually set up in their shop and
Also,
open your own shop.
I opened my
inside it.
shop in the shop. You know, the sideshow.
Yeah.
We call that the sideshow
Yeah.
on the West Coast.
Yeah.
But we did order 2 pizzas for the whole squad.
Uh-huh.
So we had a pizza party and listened to the new album. And people were asking about the album, and it seemed like it was a vibe.
Okay, so
So
let's
I
go
think
through
I'm
the
good.
meanings.
So the first one is like, nah. Like, you know, when like you want some coffee, and
No,
like,
I think I'm good. Yeah.
So it's kind of like letting go of everything. You're kind of like, sometimes the best way to open up your schedule or get the time you need to do what you need to do is kind of just like turning down everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm good. I think I'm good, like, with, you know, trying to fit in. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm good, like, with just all the jumping through all the hoops and stuff, which is kind of crazy because I feel like I'm really trying now, you know.
Right.
But the sentiment is definitely
Right.
like, man, I'm good, man. Like, I've been trying to do this for so long, man, and like, either y'all gonna feel this one or you not, and either way, I'm good.
I think I'm good.
Right, and then the other side is like, when you had too much to drink or something, and they're like, "You all right?" You're like, "Yo, I think I'm good." It's
Yeah,
like,
yep.
It's like, I think I'm okay.
Yeah. Well, that's why, especially with the aspect of mental health and the idea of revealing a certain part of your own personal struggle, the idea of saying, but I think I'm good.
I think I'm cool though.
I think I'm okay.
Yeah,
In
and
spite of everything I've been through.
yeah, and that's not to say like every day is like just, you know, Disneyland,
Yeah.
joyous. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I still deal with ups and downs, but everybody deals with that.
Yep.
But I do have enough tools
Yeah.
to navigate myself through the ups and downs properly.
Yes.
And I'm also, like, to be honest, I'm like grateful to a degree of how hard it's been to navigate emotional ups and downs, because now I know what that's all about. And I know how to, if I need to be in a good space, I know what to do that.
To get yourself there.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Has it over the years, has it impacted your career, do you think?
Totally.
Being up and down?
100%. I think that if you take the time to, like, if you have enough time to have a proper morning routine to get yourself in the right zone every day, when you go out into the world and engage with people, you're going to be such a joy to be around that, like, if your work's good and you got a good attitude, sky's the limit. You know what I mean?
And for a while you didn't have a good attitude?
Yeah, I think that it was just inconsistent. It was like I would be good one day and then another day I show up and I'm, down in the dumps. And I still have that, but I'm just saying that I have the ability to, like, push through it if I need to.
Yes.
And I need to be more like, it's like now it's like I actually put things that depend on me being consistent.
Yes.
So yeah.
You have to show up and be this guy now all the time.
Yeah, I got to hop up and talk. Yeah.
But then also you have this meaning of basically saying, I think that the music I make is good. I think that this statement that I have to make is worth making.
I think that's the best album of 2020.
What, I think I'm good?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I like that.
I'm putting my bid in. I wanted to say it last year, but I think this is the one.
You think this is it? Well, but I mean, I hope for you, every album that you make from now on, you're going to feel that way.
Well, I think that would be dope. But this one is special, man. It's like a thing where, like, when I listen to it now, I listen back to, like, when did that happen?
Yeah.
Because it happened. Making that album in itself was almost like a manic episode because it was like I set the deadline. And remember, you saw me
That's
when
what
I
I'm
came
saying.
over to the house.
I am shocked at how quickly it came together.
I was like, yo, I got to get this done by October 3rd or whatever. And I was just like, and I'm texting you. I'm texting Joel Ross. I'm texting Theo. I'm texting. And it
Sullivan,
started.
Fortner, Aaron, you got everybody.
Yeah, and the thing was that people, somehow, it all just started. I knew that there was something guiding me because people were getting free. People were like, yo, I could come Tuesday for 2 hours. I'll see you there. And it was just like, and like the single was out a month later. That song we recorded was out 1 or 2 months later. So
sometimes things connect and there's an energy around it. There's a kind of a vibration where you feel it happening, and that's what happened here.
And you catch that flow, you got to go with that flow and try to, like, breathe some air on those flames and just keep that vibe flowing. And that's the vibe.
I remember you told me once that if left to your own devices, you would play drums like 5 hours a day.
If
you had the time,
yeah.
Is that true? I mean, would you still do that?
Yeah,
do you still have the time for that right now?
No, hell no. I don't have the time, man. I don't have no time right now. It's
so
crazy.
What's it like to play?
It's great. Playing is great, but it's like also you gotta spend at least enough time to keep your chops together, or keep your mind in the music. Because if you don't, if all you're doing is thinking about strategy, when you get up to play, you won't have that connection to the music.
You've said it before. We've talked about it many times. I want to know if it's changed. You got to have a good morning routine in order to stay positive, to stay healthy.
Yeah.
What's the morning routine?
So right now, the past couple of weeks have been so busy.
Yeah.
My morning routine has been condensed.
Yes.
So I saw this YouTube video a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So this is what my morning routine is. 3 minutes of stretches.
Yes.
Which is like a downward dog, a cobra, and a squat.
Yeah.
For 3 minutes. 2 glasses of water. Oatmeal, if I can get it.
Oatmeal.
And a cold shower.
That's it.
And then that's like I could do that in like 15 minutes. If I have 10 more minutes, I'll meditate for 10 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting that if you have 10 more minutes, you would do the exercise in your mind and not in your body. You know what I mean? That the meditation takes precedence over the stretching. I mean, I understand.
No. I said stretching first.
No, but I'm saying you wouldn't add 10 more minutes of stretching or physical exercise. You would add meditation to it.
Yeah. Because the meditation is like, it's easy to get to in the morning, and that it really helps.
Yes.
For me, if even if you did 5 minutes, you can kind of shake off all the dream world stuff. You can shake off, like, it's like you get a moment in between yesterday and the next day.
Yes.
which I think meditation is good for.
I interviewed Richie Davidson. He's a scientist who's done a lot of work on meditation. He says that his goal is to get the entire world to see meditation the way we see brushing our teeth. He says we weren't born brushing our teeth. We had to learn how to do it.
Yep. I agree, and I'll double down and say I think we should get the entire world seeing playing music how we see going to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, so like you have people that play in the NBA.
Yes.
And they're the professional athletes and everything, but everybody knows that they should get exercise. And I think that playing music's the same way. You have people that, you know, put out huge hit songs and everything, but I think everybody got a song, could, you know, learn a couple chords on the guitar, the piano, whatever. Yes. And I think that back in the day, before we had so many like pop star ideals, there was a folk approach to music that, you know, was more like everybody could.
It belonged to all of us,
yeah. Yeah. So
absolutely.
I think just to add to that, we'll all meditate. Everybody will play the djembe.
Well, I like what you say. The same as going to the gym, which is you might not be playing music, but you know at least that you should play music.
Yeah. Yeah, I should go to the gym.
Yeah, exactly.
I should be playing my guitar.
That's right. Kassa Overall, congratulations on the new record. Always happy to see you, man.
Oh, good to see you, bro. February 28th, I think I'm good.
Thank you from the Bowers & Wilkins Sound Lounge at the Moxie Hotel in beautiful East Village of Manhattan. Thank you to Relics. Thank you to Winter Jazz Fest. Thank you, Kassa Overall. Thank you, Third Story Podcast. Thank you, Brownswood Recordings.
Hey.
Thank you to the Rode microphone in which I'm speaking.
Peace, y'all.
Clear.
Good shit, man.
Always
that was hella fun.
I feel like we're just going to have to do this every year. Just check in.
Hell
just
yeah.
to find out what
Let's
the morning
do it, bro.
routine is. I
Let's
just need
do
to know
it.
what the routine is.
Yeah. Let's do it.
There he was, Kassa Overall. We're getting down in the lobby. What a treat to spend a few days there at the Moxie Hotel doing these interviews for the Winter Jazz Fest and for the Third Story Podcast. I'll be back again very soon, later this week, with a final installment, and it's a good one, from my series of conversations for the Winter Jazz Fest. Until then, I'll talk to you soon.